if you don't like the NBA, I don't know why you care what the ratings are. If you like the NBA, I also don't know why you care what the ratings are. It's not going anywhere. It's not like the NBA is going to get canceled next season. It's going to get pulled off the television.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. You use code Mayo at Underdog right now. Get yourself a free pick for the Super Bowl. All right? That's something you'll want to do. There's only so many free picks and guaranteed winners you can get. If you sign up with code Mayo right now, you can get that. Today, I wanted to talk about Terry Rozier, fix games in basketball and sports in general, and the fallout and the impact on people's lives that it has. Greg, I had to bring you in because you're at the center of all of this for me online, because there's so many different ways that you can follow news and follow a story. I woke up this morning, like obviously I've seen the Terry Rozier stuff, and I did a little bit on the Jonte Porter stuff, or like a year ago, whenever that was. I kept referring to him as Jonte Murray because, I'm not that plugged in with basketball. So you release your bets every single day through OddsShopper on your Twitter account, or your X account, I suppose. But you tend to troll a little bit, and you tend to have some sarcastic responses that may or may not be true. And then I wake up this morning, Harala Bob is tweeting about something that Worldwide Wob had screenshot, and I look down, and it is your tweet about Max fixing with this Rozier game in particular. So please, can you explain to people what's going on?
Well, first off, I know it's part of the ad read, but absolutely hilarious. You start with the ad read. Like, there's only so much that's guaranteed in sports. And but so for just like in general, if people aren't familiar with my Twitter account, I constantly troll people. I think it's hilarious. I think it's one of the funniest things you could do online, as long as it's harmless to people, which this mostly is. It's just usually what ends up happening is in our tools at OddsShopper, it recommends a lot of unders. It's just kind of part of betting. There's more vig on overs than there are on unders. So unders on a market-based model tend to have more value. And what ends up happening a lot online is a player gets ruled out in the middle of a game in an NBA game, or as a late scratch or whatever. People get very upset on the internet that. And to me, that's a great opportunity to find some of the bets that I have unders on where I've benefited from this news that everybody's very upset about, and I troll them about it. And what ended up happening in this Terry Rozier situation is I had apparently 2 years ago, because I didn't remember this. It just shows up on my timeline all of a sudden. I'm getting a billion notifications. 2 years ago, Terry Rozier leaves the game early. I have an underbet on him. So I do my normal thing, tweet about it, troll people who are really upset, and be like, well, the good thing is I knew that he was going to be ruled out, which is pretty standard response for me in these sort of situations. It ends up that Terry Rozier is being investigated by the FBI for fixing this game in his stat line in some way by leaving early. And it's the exact same game that I bet on and trolled people about 2 years ago. So lightning struck. And this is how I found myself in the situation with everybody tweeting about me.
So, like, do you have your DMs open or closed?
Open.
What does that look like right now?
Well, a lot of stupid people. And then also, here's the part too. That's because they're so set that I must have done this. There's no response that I could give them that would make them think I haven't done it. Because if I say yes, they're like, aha, I got you. If I say no, then they say, well, that's what somebody who did this would say. So I just give them absurd off the wall responses to whatever it is they message me about. But it's just people cursing me out, or people asking. It's generally one of two things. It's either people cursing me out or people asking me where they could get my sources from. Those are the two things.
I feel like if I was to be one of those two people, I would be in the latter camp. Like, hey, can you hook me up with some of this inside info?
Yeah, and that's also, I just direct people to obscure sources. Like, one guy was messaging me last night, and I was telling him I get all of my betting information from the comment section on Pornhub. And he seemed to kind of believe me. And he was like, oh, could you share a link? I was like, sure, why not? So it's those are generally the two kinds of people, and none of them are getting legitimate answers from me.
I mean, it would be a decent time to peddle your promo code at OddsShopper to these people.
I've done that a little bit as well.
Are you seeing a good conversion rate through those?
So there's a little bit of a lag with the Google Analytics and the tracking. I will know in Probably like 2 hours if I got any conversions yesterday.
That's not bad. I mean, we're always so pressed for like first time depositors through Code Mayo at Underdog and like the real time tracking because you have to get to so many numbers in order to have these programs still going because that's what the business has turned into at this point. But I mean, if that's, I might have to start putting out some of these tweets if you find this to be a very viable click through rate on that.
Yeah, I'm actually, as you're talking, I'm looking up to see if I have any data on it yet from yesterday. I hope so. I hope so. This would be the funniest way ever if somebody was to ever come back and say, what was the moment in time that your business started to take off? And like I could pinpoint it to this exact moment where I got a bunch of attention and it led extra people to my Twitter handle or whatever. And then this is what got a bunch of people to sign up to the site for the first time.
So, can you actually explain to me what happens? Because the point I was trying to make at the beginning too is like it's so funny how we all collect news now. Just it's not like everyone logs on to this site like, hey, here's the news of the day. It's like, all right, like move on. It's like no, I saw it on my Twitter feed through two random people about someone that I follow every day, and like see their bets come out every day, know the entire shtick, and just like this is warped in some sort of really bizarre way. So like have like actual news sources reached out to you? Has the FBI reached out to you?
Which also would be hilarious. If yeah, I like I said it at the top, I wish that I would just come here and be under federal investigation because there's no if you could troll people that it goes to the highest level of bureaucracy, the highest level of law enforcement in the country, that would be fantastic. I think I'm trying to think how far it'd have to go for me to be like, all right, this joke has gone too far. I don't maybe if I go all the way to the prison and there's the guy who pulls out the broomstick and tells me to bend over, then maybe that would be the one time I'd be like, all right, this is maybe gone a step too far. Other than that, I don't think there's anything that could happen that I wouldn't think is hilarious about it. But yeah, I've had a bunch of news outlets reach out to me. David Payne Purdom from ESPN reached out to me. I know CBS has covered it. There's a write up in the New York Post about it. So yeah, a lot of people getting given this attention.
So, what actually happened here? He's under federal investigation for potentially manipulating his performance as a part of a sports betting scheme on March 23rd. That was last year against the Pelicans. He just left with a foot injury, and a bunch of, like, a syndicate of people had bet unders.
Yeah, so it's kind of unclear because there hasn't been that much information on all of the ongoings other than he had this game that Jonte Porter was apparently betting on Terry Rozier unders, which I guess is what had tipped them off because Jonte Porter also got in trouble last year. And that has led to, because Jonte Porter was betting on his unders and Rozier left the game in the first quarter, I guess that's kind of what tipped off law enforcement to look into this. And then I don't really think there's too much other information that's public unless something else came out last night.
So the last thing that I saw from this morning, I don't normally record this early, but I was planning on taking the day off. I saw this. I didn't realize you were such an early riser. You really got to grind those unders, huh?
Well, so it is funny. It's kind of coincidence. I got up to pee at the exact same time you messaged me, or else I wouldn't have been up. So once again, lightning strike, get to come on Pat Mayo's show because I got up to pee at the same time that you were up.
Which is well, it's hilarious because I was looking at our DMs before, and it's just like, hey, if you ever have a good idea for a show, like let me know. It's like, here we go.
That's a good point because we had talked about that a couple months ago, wanting to work on something together, and then just nothing really came of it. But then here, the idea came about. But it is typically the best time to place bets, especially for NBA, are some of those opening lines in the morning. So I was also placing bets at the same time. It's just kind of coincidental.
Well, how does the NBA market work in that sense? Because we talked about like Monday on the show about Super Bowl and all these props. Like if you ever want to bet overs on any of these props, now is the time to do it. Because if you wait 10 days to the Thursday or Friday, Saturday or Sunday of the Super Bowl, those lines are going to be 15, 16 yards more than they are at the moment because everyone's going to line up and bet over. So you can almost make all your over bets on the Monday following the conference championship and just play all of the unders on those same bets 10 days later.
Yeah, so NBA line, they used to get posted a little bit earlier. I think like as of a couple years ago, they were still posting overnight lines on a lot of the rec books. It doesn't happen quite as much anymore. So what you end up finding is the best value spots, especially in a market-based model like we have at OddsShopper and on Portfolio EV tools, is the best value is when lines start to be posted around this time in the morning. And then there's just going to be some discrepancies in line movement where you'll see some of the best value spots open up around this time. So it's pretty frequent that, I don't know, 50 to 70% of the bets that I place for the day will be in the first hour or so that I'm awake.
So you've been doing a thing since the beginning of NBA season of releasing, Jesus, like 15 props per day as a part of the thread on your X account. Plug your X account, by the way.
Yeah, so at G Ehrenberg DFS, and what you guys could find there is bets, B+ jokes, trolling, actionable betting and DFS advice. So if any of those things are of interest to you, that's what you could find. And what Pat is referring to right there is what I started to do at the beginning of this NBA season was a thread where I started with $100 bankroll. And the idea is supposed to be to show people how you could use the tools on our site, even if you're a lower dollar bettor, to grow a bankroll over the course of the season. So what we did was I put in our tools $100 because it tells you not only what to bet, but also how much to bet on each of those wagers, depending on the strength of the bet. So just pulling bets from our tools, entering a $100 bankroll from day one of the season, and then just playing out over the year and seeing where it's at. Right now, it's at about $500, so about 5x the bankroll over the course of the season to this point. And that's been like a flagship piece of content for me on social media.
Yeah, it's been really cool to follow along. Like I was trying to come across a few times, and like, sometimes I want to get on I'm not watching a ton of NBA, or I have some rollover that I need to do, and just be like, all right, I'll take like 4 of Greg's like first 5 plays that come out. Because that's the thing. It's not like you're ranking them in order, are you? You're just putting out here because it's more about a volume play with you on this and how you can beat the market over time based on the tools. If I'm just picking and choosing 3, well, you could go 12-3 that day. I just might pick the 3 to lose.
Yeah, and so the way it actually, because I'm not posting every single bet that I play, and nor do I actually have a $100 bankroll. So what it usually is
so your bankroll is less. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's actually negative $15. The problem is I couldn't even afford the $100 to start. So I will bet. It depends on the size of the slate, but say anywhere from like 70 to 200 bets in a given day from our tools. And I take a random sample size of the bets that I'm placing for myself and then scaling it for the bankroll of what the bankroll building thread is at. And then those handful of whatever it ends up being 15, 20, 25 bets, I post on Twitter for the day as piece of the content. So it's something that is not going to be the exact same bets that I'm placing every day. It's bets that I'm placing. It's just not the full sample size of all of them.
And I've tried things like this before, and this seems to be working for you on X, like to gain traction. Like we've seen so many different types of these things. I do like how it's every day. There's a scoreboard running. Hey, I won this much last night. I lost this much last night. And it must be good for you that it's going well.
Yeah. It's definitely good for me that it's going well. And it still is like ebbs and flows to it. So at the start of the year, it felt like I couldn't lose, where I was just posting every single day it would win. I think like 13 of the first 14 slates of the NBA season, they all won, which I also kind of didn't like. Obviously, I want to happen, but at the same time, kind of didn't want it to happen because I don't want to give people an unrealistic expectation of what to think when they sign up. And then I went on a little bit of a downswing, which I kind of liked. I know you asked me, it's good if it's going well. And the answer is yes, obviously in the hole. I didn't want it to be something where I won every single day, though. And then people think like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And then people sign up and they lose like 2 out of 3 days and think like, oh, something doesn't work or anything like that. So started the season really hot, then hit a little bit of a downswing in December and the early of January, which I thought was like kind of good for the piece of content, just to show people like, hey, this is something that's going to happen when you sports bet. And what you do, you don't give up. You don't freak out. Maybe you troll people on Twitter. That could be one way to deal with it. But you just kind of continue on with the process. And now it's on its way back up again. And it's back to over $500. So there's always going to be ebbs and flows. But if you look at the entire sample size and you back out, it's pretty easy to see how it's worked for the season.
I think you need to lean into that the other way. Be like, no, it can't lose, because anyone who is reasonable knows that there's big downswings. You'll have, like, I've been on a heater 10 days in a row kind of thing, like over the course of that week. And like I was on a 3-month losing streak before that. It's like, oh, this is great. I know it's going to flip back the other way soon. I had a guy yelling at me the other day about a 120-1 golfer that didn't win a tournament. Like, people are fucking morons.
The other part of it too is when you talk about leaning into the problem is, as I found out through, not that we haven't known this before, people take everything so literally online that I really do think that if you told people this can't lose, look, it wins every day, I think like 75% of people would just buy into that. They just see whatever people see on the internet, they think it must be true.
So I'm reading the latest update here. And so this is from, I have no idea. Let's see. In March 2023, the NBA was alerted to the unusual betting practices regarding Terry Rozier's performance in that game. The league conducted an investigation and did not find any violations of NBA rules. The league says we are now aware of an investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Eastern District of New York related to the matter and have been cooperating with the investigation. And then I read that tweet, and the first thing underneath of it was someone screenshotting your tweet.
Oh, there we go. Shut and close case. They got him.
You nailed them. Yeah, that's exactly how it's going to work with this stuff. I think it's good that these guys are getting caught. And I don't even know if Rozier did. This could be like a weird coincidence, right?
It's definitely possible. There was also just Twitter rumors, so it means absolutely nothing. But he did have what it appeared to be an ex-girlfriend who was an Instagram model who had claimed that he was missing shots on purpose, that she could win parlays. She since deleted those tweets. Once again, no idea if that's true or not. It most likely isn't, but it's just something else that's funny to the Twitter rumor mill.
It made sense to me with Jonte Porter. Like, this is a guy who's probably not going to be in the league all that often, signing 10-day contracts. Like, yeah, go get your bag if you can try to get it. It's stupid when your brother's making it, when your brother probably has like $300 million in the bank. That, yeah, just ask him for a loan at some point, or just, hey, can I have $1 million? It'll be fine. Instead of going to like bet $10 parlay unders on yourself on wherever it might be. But with Rozier, like, it really doesn't make any sense. Like, hasn't he made like $200 million in his career? Is he out of money? Or is it just like or is this like a weird fascination that people have that they get sucked down this hole? Whatever might happen, but I don't quite understand it from a player of this level.
Yeah. So Terry Rozier's career earnings, that's a big number here. Yeah. $133 million. So you would have to ask, like, what are the incentives for him to do it, to be doing this? And that's where you look at like the model who had tweeted, maybe he was trying to impress her or something like that. Maybe it is something where it's just a coincidence. It is really hard to figure out what the actual motive would be for this. Cause like you said, he has a lot of money and you could only risk it. Like, what is even if he was going to make $5 million from this, why would that be worth the risk? Like, it's really hard to figure out from a logic standpoint why this would be worthwhile for him.
And how come Terry Rozier can get down $5 million on props and we can get down 90 cents?
It's a good question. Oh, the only person who knows the answer is apparently me, according to people online.
Yeah, the internet has you pegged as like you're the guy who's really profiting off you. Would you win like $112 off of it?
Yeah, it was it was a $122 bet to win $100, which also part of this too, because people will say like, why didn't you bet more money? In general, that's kind of what my max win is on FanDuel, is right around $100. So would have been the most that I could have won on any book anyway.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Like, people think that you can get down like billions of dollars on props, and that's just simply not true.
No, it's not at all. Like, you could definitely be profitable, very profitable volume betting on props, even being limited. It's one of the things that I do like about volume betting is even if some of these books, whether it be, DraftKings or, Fanatics, all these different ones combined, if they're only letting you get down, $7, $10, $15 per bet, but if you could find 100, 150 bets that are plus EV in a given day, you actually can still make decent returns even with limited accounts. So that's one thing where volume betting helps. But yeah, you're not going to be able to bet. Back in the day, you used to be able to in sports betting first open, but typically you're not going to be able to get down more than a few dollars on most prop bets. The only rec book that has pretty decent limits is FanDuel, and even that is going to be like I could win $75 or $100.
It just strikes me as so strange with some of this stuff. And maybe they were adding it to their underdog plays. Maybe they were taking Terry Rozier unders, using code Mayo, getting the guaranteed winner, and then it's a printing press.
That's probably it. And they were probably using your promo code too. I would assume
Mayo.
so.
You want to get that Super Bowl free pick in you. So just even to go on about this, like, I don't know if it's true, whether it's not true, but I think it's a good thing that he's getting caught. Like, isn't this what we wanted when the moment that regulated sports betting came around? And there's huge downfalls to it, but now it's legal in a lot of states. People that weren't able to sports bet are now able to do it. There's a huge tax plan in something like New York, which makes it pretty unfeasible for the sports books to actually run their books with the amount of taxes that they have to pay. But that money is going back into the state, going back into the people. It's a real sin tax in that regard. But if this just didn't, if betting wasn't regulated, we wouldn't catch on to this stuff at all. It would just be happening and no one would know. But now people like to point out and be like, see what's happening. I feel like this is a good thing that people don't understand. It's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if players are getting caught, it means it's working. The guardrails that are in place, like Jonte Porter, I don't know what the last update has been on him, but I assume that he's going to prison or something along those lines. He got caught. He's out of the NBA now. Terry Rozier being investigated. What's going to come of this? We don't know. But if he did something wrong, then there's going to be ramifications for it. So to me, what it is that we've seen here is that, yeah, there are regulations in place and it's overall been beneficial, and it should make you feel better about where your dollars are going and that it isn't based on some event that's rigged in any kind of way. Now, obviously, if you did happen to bet on that individual game that Jonte Porter bet on, there's no way to guarantee that it will never happen. But I think that there are signs that say that there are penalties in place that could lead to players getting in trouble, which would prevent them from doing it, which wouldn't exist had there been, no regulations at all.
Now, does this mean that the Super Bowl will or will not be rigged?
It depends if the Chiefs win. That's the only way to know.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Like, if they win, it was for sure rigged. Is that what we're going with?
Yeah. Do you remember the conspiracies from last year in the playoffs?
I don't. I mean, this stuff goes like in one ear, out the other. Like, I just don't pay attention to it. What was it last year? Taylor Swift?
So there was two. First, it was the Super Bowl was going to be rigged for the Bills to win for the DeMar Hamlin story. Then the Bills lost, and then it became the Taylor Swift thing. So the big conspiracy theory was that the NFL was going to rig the Super Bowl for the Chiefs so that Taylor Swift could come on the field and promote Joe Biden for president. And then when the Chiefs actually won, Joe Biden tweeted just as we planned it and put a picture of himself up with, I mean, it wasn't him, it was his interns or whatever.
No, it wasn't Joe Biden.
It wasn't Joe Biden who was doing the editing or any of that. But then when the Chiefs won, from Biden's account, it tweeted out just as we planned it, and it was a picture of him with the laser eyes.
I mean, that's hilarious trolling. Probably not the right account to be doing that from.
No, probably not. Probably not from the president of the at the time sitting president of the United States account. But yeah, I mean, there are these conspiracies just constantly, and the ones last year. If you look in hindsight, the idea that Taylor Swift was going to promote Joe Biden so that he could win the presidency, it hasn't aged all that well.
No, my favorite Taylor Swift NFL controversy was the reason that she got together with Travis Kelce in the first place is because her jet had ended up becoming like it was giving out so many emissions for going on like the Eras tour around the world and the traveling back and forth she was going to do. And environmentalists were really going to come for her. And that she got together with Kelce one week because they were playing at the Jets the next week. So when you went on to Google and typed in Taylor Swift Jets, the emission stuff got buried. It's all, she's going to the Jets game. That was 3D chess or 4D chess even, right? That was just galaxy brain stuff.
And now she might even marry him for it, which is really, that's the long play. That's the real cover up. If you marry somebody to prevent being implicated in something that damages the environment.
Yeah, it's just the notion that you could be damaging the environment. There'd be no repercussions on you for this besides a little bit of bad press that no one would care about. Welcome to the TGL presented by SoFi, golf's newest league. It's sharp and it's electric. How is it sharp? How is it electric? Good questions. Try this on for size. 2 hours of hammer dropping, overtime forcing, playoffs on the line golf with 24 of the best players from the PGA Tour. Tuesday, February 4th, we got the Boston Common versus Los Angeles Golf Club. Rory McIlroy, Keegan Bradley, Adam Scott, and Hideki Matsuyama taking on Colin Morikawa, Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose, and Sahith Theegala. This isn't your average Sunday pickup game. Tune in each week for TGL only on ESPN. Keep up. It's golf.
Yeah, so NFL Conspiracies alive and well. I don't know what the latest ones are in terms of off the wall ones, but everybody's very convinced that the NFL is rigging games so that the big market Kansas City Chiefs could win and the small market New York teams would suck year over year.
It really does make no sense. I mean, it's really a testament to why, like, Patrick Mahomes, obviously a star. Who would you say is a bigger star nationally? Is it Mahomes or is it Kelsey?
Oh, that's a good question.
Probably Kelsey, right?
Yeah, just because Kelsey has this appeal within our bubble, it's Patrick Mahomes. But if you're talking about outside of us, and then also internationally, I know, like if we look overseas, I assume there's a lot of people who don't know who Patrick Mahomes is just because they're not interested in football, but they probably know who Travis Kelce is just from dating Taylor Swift. So yeah, Travis Kelce's probably more famous than Patrick Mahomes.
I always call it my grandma test. Like, how would my grandma know this person? And does she know this person? And the only football player she knows is Travis Kelce. He hosted Saturday Night Live. He's dating Taylor Swift. That makes a ton of sense. And like with us, usually said inside of our bubble, football people clearly know, Patrick Mahomes, the best player in football, is going to be there. I don't think they need any like extra juice. Like they could, if the NFL was smart in their rigging and conspiracies, they'd prop someone else up here to be a legitimate rival.
Yeah, and another thing too is there's been a kind of absence of parity in the NFL this year. I don't know if you felt this way, but
which is
it's
good.
Usually every team kind of gravitates towards being around 500. It feels like as of late, there's been an abnormal amount of top end teams and an abnormal amount of just really shitty low end teams that are just completely uninvolved. And then, yeah, if you were actually rigging the games, you would want every team to be competitive. And yeah, that's really not been the case as of late, which I'm kind of interested actually now thinking about why that would be the case, that there is less parity.
Well, I think that there's two answers to that. One, I think if I was rigging the league, I would want it to look more this way than to have absolute parity. Look at the NBA. Like, I've become less and less interested in the NBA as the years have gone along, because there's only, the older you get, there's only so much you can pay attention to. Like, sports just start dropping off the radar. And there's no, especially for someone who works in sports, like you have, listen, I'm aware of things that are going on in other sports, but when you cover sports full time, you generally start picking the sport that you want to cover. Like, I cover football, I cover golf, and everything is sort of fan based at that point. That's why when I lived in Toronto, it was fun. Like, hey, I could just go see a Raptors game. Hey, Giannis is in town. I'm going to go see Giannis take on the Raptors. Hey, Jokic is in town. I'm going to see Jokic go take on the Raptors. Then I have to cross my fingers and hope that these guys actually play in the games after I buy my tickets to them. Although in the NBA Finals that year, it was the opposite. It's like, I'm kind of glad Durant's not playing in this game right now. He's like, we might actually win this one. This is great. But to look at it from the outside in, like, when was the most successful time for the NBA over the past 10 years? It was every year when the Warriors played the Cavs in the finals.
Yeah, those were, and even now, if you go back to the Christmas Day games this year, which drew, I think, like some of the highest ratings that the NBA's ever had on Christmas, the highest rated game, to your point, it was Lakers Warriors. It was Steph Curry versus LeBron James. It was people trying to, recapture something from a few years ago and knowing that there's only a few more times these guys are going to play against each other. But yeah, there isn't really a rival to the Chiefs. Like, there's other good teams, but there's not like a Larry Bird to the Magic Johnson. There's not a Steph Curry to the LeBron James.
Well, there is, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be a rivalry in that sense. I think you need to have the dynasty. You need to have that team that's going to win every year. And then it's a really big deal when someone knocks them off. Like, because we work in a sports bubble, we think that everyone's as into sports as we are, but that's not the case. Those people are going to watch sports either way. I always talk about this in terms of golf. People get so freaked out about the ratings. It's like, the ratings are fine. It's never going to be a popular thing. People tuning into golf for 8 hours a day, 4 days in a row. It's just not feasible. It's not going to happen. There's a reason that 75-year-olds watch this stuff, because they're at home and they have nothing to do at this time. But how do you get the casual person? Like, people want to compare stuff like, well, when Tiger was playing, it's like, well, fucking Tiger Woods was playing. It's a once in a lifetime draw that people want to tune in and watch. And the only way that you can really do that is to build a dynasty. I'm going, well, Scotty Scheffler won 7 times last year. Why don't people watch him? Tiger won like every major for fucking 5 years in a row, basically. It was the most dominant golfer of all time. And he was black and looked different than everyone else out on the course. It brought in a new crop of people to watch this, a younger crop of people to watch this. It made golf somewhat cool. I like Scotty Scheffler and all. He's not making golf cool by any means. He looks like the most generic golfer. You like, if you AI a golfer, you might come up with Scotty Scheffler. And that's sort of the reason that all of these guys just seem like they're drones at this point. But to translate it back the other way to the NFL, like having the Chiefs have a dynasty is a great thing. It's something a casual fan, they learn the players. Another reason why like NCAA basketball can almost swing back the other way now, that it's a bit more fun because guys are switching teams less. They're leaving for the NBA less now after 1 year because they can get these NIL deals. Like college basketball got blown up the moment everyone was one and done. Like I couldn't remember who was on any team year to year. I had no investment in any of these teams. And this is the casual investment that my wife gets by coming to the Super Bowl party. It's like, hey, I know Patrick Mahomes. I know the Chiefs. They're the red team. Like there is something to that I think that people really overlook because they want parity. We want parity as fans. That's a lot of fun. We want to see, oh, there's like 20 teams that can win the Super Bowl, but that's not actually good for ratings. And the NBA is suffering the other way with this, where for years it was very lopsided, like very, very top heavy. And now it does seem like, yeah, like OKC, Boston, Denver, they're probably going to be there at the end. But it does feel like even this year, there's like 10 other teams, like, you know, if they made a trade or got hot or something happened, like they have a real chance to win. And I think that's actually hurting the NBA.
Could be. Something else as well that I don't really think people really take into account is also the ratings thing. I'm really confused why people give a shit. Like completely confused. If you don't like the NBA, I don't know why you care what the ratings are. If you like the NBA, I also don't know why you care what the ratings are. It's not going anywhere. It's not like the NBA is going to get canceled next season. It's going to get pulled off the television. The games are still going to be there. So I don't really understand the fascination with it on any level. Then even if people start to say, well, what if the players make less money? I don't care. I've never watched a game and either liked it more or less because the player's making $50 or $30 million. They're going to be fine. I'm going to enjoy the game for myself. Like, I don't really understand the public fascination with the television ratings, why it's of interest to them or how it impacts them at all.
I think I mean, you could point to politics being like the main root of this, but I mean, it's happened in politics. So I think that you can draw like a perfect line back to it if you wanted to. But I think it's just internet culture in general and the way that discourse has worked in social media has really just taken control and brain rotted everyone that if I like the NBA, the ratings need to be great to justify that I like the NBA. If I don't like the NBA and the ratings are down, you're stupid. You like something that no one likes. Like those become the two baseline arguments. And there's no like, it's just going to exist. Just like what you like. Who cares? That's my whole thing with golf. Like golf is in a bit more precarious spot, but it's not like the PGA Tour is going anywhere. Golf isn't going to cease to exist on television next year if the John Deere Classic ratings are down 13%. Like who fucking cares? It's going to be on TV. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to bet on it. I'm going to enjoy it. Whatever you want to do, that's on you, man.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it as well. Because I have people who I tweet out NBA bets or I have a post about NBA. Every once in a while, somebody will say, why are you posting about this? The ratings are down. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed? What am I? My bad. I'm wrong. I have to stop watching. Other people don't enjoy it. Like what I enjoy or what you enjoy, it really shouldn't matter what other people's opinions are to that extent. I'm just totally confused by how people have become so invested in what the ratings are. And I haven't really heard a good explanation for why anybody cares about it.
Well, I guess the reason that people would care about it, I think, is because how we've evolved as media and the type of content that people put out. Obviously, as you may know, I don't know if you know this or not, but you may know, gambling has really infiltrated a lot of sports. Did you know that in terms of media buys, advertisements, and what people actually talk about on these shows?
It's been brought to my attention.
So if you're not someone who knows anything about gambling, although that doesn't stop very many people from not talking about it, because I've seen plenty of like my takes are bad because I'm a losing bettor and I just enjoy to bet. It's not like I don't know proper strategy of betting, what to look at. It's just I like to have fun. It's entertainment for me. But I've seen people on TV legitimately talking about betting who have no clue like actually what they're talking about. Doesn't stop them. But there's a lot of old heads that what can they actually talk about now? Well, you could have like your Zach Lowe's of the world, RIP Zach Lowe's content. Hopefully he comes back soon with some of this stuff. It's also one of the reasons I've started to drop off because I love listening to Lowe all the time. He's just not around this year. But like actual X's and O's basketball stuff. Like, hey, that's really intriguing content. You see this like the guys that break down like the all 22 on Twitter or have these podcasts, even like Josh and Hayden who do it on the Underdog channel, I think do a really good job of that stuff. Now, obviously Underdog, who is the main sponsor of my show, Code Mayo, and their show, who's actually paying for it, it's all a big funnel back to it. But they let those guys actually talk about real things. And then you have these old dudes who've been around in the media for ages. Like, what can they now talk about? Before they could write these like puff pieces about like interesting stories or whatever it might be, or the reporter who's on the scene. The only thing the reporters are there for now is for people who gamble to ask them who's starting tonight. That's legitimately the only thing that matters to their job anymore. That's why they're there. That's why they get paid. That's how much the industry has changed. You don't need to send people all the time. What do these guys do? They can't talk about gambling. They can't really talk about X's and O's. They're not coaches, film breakdown people, or ex-athletes. So they can talk about ratings and what that means for the business of sport. And I've just seen so much more of that content over the past 3 years that now everyone feels like they're an expert and they feel like it really matters, when I don't think that it does.
Yeah. Well, also online, people think they're an expert in every single subject matter, no matter what it is. Like, I don't think people realize how qualified you have to be to make a Twitter/X account. You have to be an expert in politics. You have to be an expert in sports. You have to be an expert in literally everything. Whatever.
Dieting too. Don't forget running, like earning 7 figures a month and like having an 8-pack like that. These are just these people. I don't see them in real life as much, but man, it must be because they're just inside on the internet.
If there was a nuclear war, everybody on Twitter would be a nuclear bomb expert. No matter what it is, everybody becomes an expert in every single subject matter, no matter what it is. And then people will watch an 8-second clip and they will tell you exactly what happened in every given scenario. So you have to be immensely qualified to create a free X account. As far as what we're talking about with some of the talking points of sports and how that's impacted some discussion, I also think something that's really hurt the NBA, which this is not exactly an original thought. A lot of people have brought this up, but the most popular show that covers the NBA is the TNT halftime show with Charles, with Kenny, and with Shaq. And a lot of the content on their show is built around kind of shitting on the modern NBA. They'll talk about how it was better in their day. They do a bit on their show where they say, we don't know who the players are. Like I don't know if you've seen this before, but they'll show players and they have to guess who the player is. And none of them will have any clue who the player is or what team they are. So you have this content that's very popular covering the NBA, but it's not the X's and O's of the game. A lot of it is just, we don't know the sport. We don't like the modern NBA. And then I think people watch that and just kind of parrot it, and it drives some of their opinions. And then when some of this stuff does come out about the ratings, they'll just say, well, look, the NBA is no good because the people who are covering the NBA as experts have told us it's no good.
See, that show is funny on 2 separate levels because it can be enjoyed. It's a lot like Stephen A. Smith in a really weird way, where it's that bell curve thing that you have, like the bet on the Chiefs, and everyone galaxy braining in the middle, where the stupidest people and the smartest people have come to the correct conclusion. And that's really where you want to be, I think, with media. Like that's why that TNT show does so well, because morons will parrot what these guys say. And like smart people who watch it, like, this is hilarious. Like, I like this.
Yeah. And I both like the show and dislike it, because I think it's like Barkley's hilarious. He's one of my favorite media people. Like his bit on San Antonio and how everybody's fat there, it's hilarious. It makes he's done it a million times on TV, and it makes me laugh every single time. But then it's also not the place I would want to go to actually get basketball analysis. It's a show that exists in a basketball medium, but it's really a comedy show disguised as a basketball show. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that.
Well, you know who else suffers from that problem, Greg?
Anybody who follows me on Twitter or seen my account. Oh, you
and
too?
The whole audience of, not the whole audience of the Pat Mayo Experience. New people who show up to the Pat Mayo Experience. We are a comedy show disguised as a sports betting show. We like to bet on sports. That's not why people tune into the show. That's not why it's popular. That it's because that people like to come, turn on the show, have a few laughs, maybe get some information. But if they wanted like real critical analysis of sports betting, they're not coming to me. But there are people who think that, like, and obviously the way that the show is, I wouldn't even say marketed, but how the discoverability of the show works. People watch like 5 minutes and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I hate this.
Yeah, fair enough. Also, I think we should maybe think about the fact, is Pat involved in rigging the NFL? Because there's only one reason. There's only one reason that people should think the Jets would be bad. And that would be so cuss segments are funnier on your content. So there's motive there.
See, I actually think it's better when the Jets are good, because it's not fun when the Jets are really bad all year long. It's better when they're like 7-1 and then they finish 7-10.
Is it, or maybe the other side of it too is, well, I think you probably win no matter what, because all of the cuss content is good. But probably the best is when he could, which is kind of what you're talking about. They start 7-1 and finish 7-10, but they have a really promising run to the playoffs, and then it ends in some sort of a massive heartbreak when his expectations are at an all-time high.
Yes. Even to have the rug pulled out at different times, like he didn't get too invested. Like he's a big Notre Dame guy. And just, we don't talk about college football on the show as much, but I could just hear him, like the heavy breathing every time that it would come up, that he didn't want to talk about it. But with the Jets, we have to lean into that part. He's been taking so many L's. He takes L's all the time, obviously, but with the Jets itself, like he builds them up so high that it's funny to see them come crashing down. But it would be almost better, I think, content wise, to see them have some success and then get the rug pulled at the very last second, wherever it may be, because sometimes it just gets really depressing halfway through the year.
What was the season that you thought the reactions to cuss were the funniest that the Jets have had?
I mean, this year to begin was pretty good because just, Aaron's, it was the beginning of last year and Rodgers getting hurt was just like the ultimate, like nothing can ever compare to this. But I forget what year it was. It was probably the first Darnold year. Like we were doing the show then, and he threw the pick 6 to start the season. And then they won that game in Detroit week 1, and it was Super Bowl time. And the expectations could not have been higher. Sam Darnold was going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. And obviously everyone knows how that went. He was pretty big on Zach Wilson too, comparing him to Mahomes.
Yeah, that might have been a little bit of a stretch there. It's kind of unfortunate that Sam Darnold didn't win a Super Bowl with the Vikings this year, because that would be probably the funniest thing that could possibly happen to the Jets franchise.
I couldn't figure out if people were rooting for Sam Darnold or not. Like I like Sam. Like it'd be a nice resurrection story of his career. Go to get Kevin O'Connell, because we were having these arguments. I mean, this is what's fun about football. Like, because like sort of the brother, or at least the cousins of the rating conversation is the contract conversation. But I think that's a little bit more important to how teams actually function. Like, do you hamstring yourself by locking this guy up long term when your team is maybe not all that good? And I like, even if Darnold won the Super Bowl, I was like, they might re-sign him to a big deal if they win the Super Bowl. They should not re-sign this guy to a bunch of money. Like, it's not worth it. Like, if you can find Sam Darnold off the scrap heap, granted, he was the 3rd overall pick, talented guy, you put him in the right situation. Why couldn't Kevin O'Connell just find someone else like that you don't have to pay $50 million a year? And you just drafted a quarterback in the top 10. Like, why would you give this guy money?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it would be, so if I'm the Vikings, part of it's going to depend on how I evaluate JJ McCarthy. Like, I don't know what they think of him. I don't know what he looked like in practice. I don't know what his health situation is. If they're very confident that he's still going to be a guy for them, then yeah, I think that would still be the piece to build around. But if there's any doubt at all, you know that you're a Super Bowl contender right now with Sam Darnold. Although what I think is the funniest possible scenario, Aaron Rodgers leaves the Jets. Jets all of a sudden have an opening at quarterback. Who do they bring back? Sam Darnold. Give him the big contract. And then what happens? He reverts right back to being the old Sam Darnold with the Jets.
I mean, we saw the old Sam Darnold show up in the playoffs.
We did.
But part of the argument too, like when you think about this through a football sense, and I assume this works through an NBA lens too, now with the apron and the NBA really feeling like it doesn't necessarily have a hard cap, but you are so penalized for some of this stuff and limited in the moves that you can make if you're over a certain salary range, that it does more and more feel like that if you pay Sam Darnold $8 million a year, Well, you can afford 3 really good defenders or a really good offensive lineman to help him out. If you're paying him $50 million a year, you don't get those guys anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it just depends really on, like I said, I think the entire decision point to me would be made on what they make of JJ McCarthy, how he looked in practice, and what his health is. If they feel good about him, then yeah, I think it makes all the sense in the world to build around JJ McCarthy, save the cap space. But if you do get a scenario where JJ McCarthy is not good next year, you could really quickly see a team that contended for a Super Bowl be a fringe playoff team in a year.
Sure, but like, do we not think that maybe Minnesota overachieved anyway, that maybe they weren't really this good?
Oh, for sure. For sure. But
So,
still
like,
probably...
there could be natural regression baked into that. Let's say McCarthy starts and they go 7-10, but they're like basically the same team. You're like, well, obviously McCarthy sucks and Darnold was great, or they just ran hot this year.
Yeah, I think it probably the expectations would probably have to be somewhere in between. I think their win total last year was 7.5, and then they ended up winning, maybe not exactly in between, but maybe the expectation going into next year, I would assume their win total is probably like 9.5 or something like that. That's probably like a fair barometer for what we would expect them to be if McCarthy was the quarterback. But I have no clue what some of the situations are with other players coming and going on the team who's potentially a free agent. So just like assuming that more or less the same core is there.
Do you think that's why, obviously, the NFL dominates the discourse because it's the highest rated? I mean, that's good in the ratings, I hear. The NFL, that does very well. Although people even complaining about that, it's like, well, did you know the AFC Championship game was down 0.9 ratings points? Like, no one cares about the NFL anymore. It's like, it is the most watched thing in North America by a factor of 10. Like, it's not even close what comes down to it. But people complaining about football ratings is crazy to me. Now, I would get a discussion about like, hey, how did the Peacock game do in terms of generating new signups to Peacock or Amazon Prime? Like, I understand the discussion behind that because that's almost like what we were talking about with first time depositor discussions. Like, what's a way to game that? That's the only reason to have. It's no different between getting underdog signups, odd shopper signups, fantasy national signups for me, /Mayo to get 20% off, by the way, Peacock, Amazon Prime. Like, what actually works in generating signups? It's not that NBC wants to be in the football business because football is popular, but they want to be on the over the top streaming network business because they can own everything that appears on that. And is football a big enough draw to get people to sign up? That's interesting to me from a business perspective. But if I'm a sports fan, why would I care? Besides that, it's harder for me to watch the game.
Yeah, which is kind of where I was at before on it. And also, it's one of the reasons that I think with something like the NBA or the PGA especially, it is so difficult to find where to watch stuff on Sundays. There's a ton of different streaming apps. It doesn't work on one. You need this subscription to be on this thing, but then it's only on this app from 2 to 4 Eastern time. Then it's on this other thing from 9 to 12. So that could only hurt the ratings. Like Seinfeld wasn't popular because it changed what networks and time slots that it was on every single Tuesday night or whatever it was. So I do think that there's a portion of that hurts the PGA. But then to your point also, if they're on these streaming platforms and they're generating a bunch of signups and they're making a bunch of additional revenue from that signups, it's information about their business model that we also don't know to say that it's unhealthy. Whereas the NFL, if you want to watch a football game, it's on Fox or CBS at 1 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern time. Like it's appointment viewing and you know where to find it. And then also the TV ratings are going to be better just from a standpoint of they are on TV. I watch NBA every night. I can't remember the last time I watched an NBA game on TV though.
You just watch League Pass?
So either League Pass or more commonly now, because we run shows on playback, I'm on playback and I'm just watching with our audience there. So there's so many different outlets to watch individual sports like golf or basketball. There aren't for football. Like football, yes, some of the primetime games are on ESPN or on Amazon, but the bulk of the games are just on public TV at the same times every week. That's not the case for any other sporting event. It's information about like NBA League Pass. We just don't know how many people are watching it or how many signups there are.
And you probably wouldn't need, if you're going to have the streaming services that people actually have to pay to go through you in order to watch the sports, you don't need ratings as high because you're making more money off of it.
Yeah. NBA League Pass. I don't think they make that public at all, how many NBA League Pass subscribers there are. Like I'm positive there are less people that watch the NBA now than did, say, 15 years ago. But there's different ways to consume sports in general. There's also more competition just in terms of things that are available. Like one thing also for golf, people go watch Tigers Golf League, they could watch Live, they could watch the PGA Tour, or you could just go on YouTube and you watch Bo Horvath's Golf Channel or something like that. And that could be your golf entertainment. There's so many other mediums for people to watch that sport and still be entertained that it introduces extra, extra content, extra ways for people to be entertained.
I love that you've been spending so much time on Odd Shopper and doing props for so many different sports.
I realized, as I said, I know you're going to say Grant Horvath.
Grant Horvath, the golfer, Bo Horvath, the hockey player.
Yeah, I realized it as soon as it came out of my mouth.
Who does Bo Horvath plays for? What, the Islanders now?
Yeah, I think he's a defenseman for the Islanders who pretty regularly, I bet, for under 2.5 shots on goal. And yeah, I realized as soon as I said it that I meant to say Grant Horvath, and I said Bo Horvath.
It's just a sign you're getting old. It happens to me all the time, man. Like the moment I had kids, like I thought I'd be fine. Like, how do these people go on these podcasts and they mess up people's names? And like, I do it at least 3 times a show now. My brain is turning to mush.
I could relate to that.
So all I need is for you to give me that inside info on the rigged NBA prop so I can make my money and get out. Just clean break.
All you have to do is follow me on Twitter at GEhrenbergDFS. Also, if you're somebody who's actually interested in sports betting, like actual sports betting, not just pretending that you could find inside knowledge or whatever, we also have a free 7-day trial to our Odd Shopper portfolio of tools. All of the results on our site are completely public. So if you are curious about what the results of the model are, whether things are going well or things are going poorly, you could look at our results for the entire season. You could look at the last season, you could look at the last 30 days, the last 7 days, and all transparent. Everything's public.
Thank you for joining me. And I will continue to tail along with, I'm not going to play all 15 NBA bets a day from your X account, but I'm going to dabble in and out of this. I just like putting them together for underdog. I can't remember if I did to Meany one time. He threw out a big like shot prop. He's like, here are my 5 favorite shot props of the day. And I had this like bonus like bet to run through. It's like, yeah, I'll just parlay them together and put $500 on it. So I sent him like $1,000 after it won because I won so much money. If that happens to me, Greg, with your basketball bets, I will do that for you too.
All right. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Well, that will do it for me. Everyone have a good weekend. We have a huge week next week, obviously. The Waste Management Open is happening as a lead into Super Bowl licks. So we've already done some early props for the Super Bowl. A lot of overs, as we talked about. We had 3 football shows this week. We have beaucoup football shows next week, including the Best Bet show, the Spread Pick show. We're going to have a DFS show. I've just sold, along with Justin Freeman, runthesims.com, to Brian Hooper and their friends over at Endgame Syndicate. So we might come on and talk a little bit about how those tools are going to work and help make the picks along with Davis and Brian and all those guys as well. So a ton of football, a ton of golf, and maybe even some more fun topics like this every single Friday. All right. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!